Welcome to Change It Up Radio here with Paula Shaw. I am your host and I am delighted to be with you today. For those of you who are new to me and to this show, I'm a life transition coach. That means I work with people who are dealing with change. And as we all know, change can be exciting and sometimes change is unwelcome. In a situation like a death, a divorce, a health loss, a job loss, those kinds of changes can be very difficult for us to deal with. And all change creates loss because something's got to go if something new is going to happen. And loss is difficult for humans. It puts us in a situation where we hate the discomfort of the unfamiliar. And loss leads to grief. Now, grief is tricky because grief has many faces. Grief can show up as overwhelming sadness and devastation. It can show up as fear. It can show up as anger or anxiety, or fogginess, inability to focus, inability to think straight. There are so many ways that grief shows up. And so it can fool us. It can fool us because sometimes we just know we're depressed or we know we're anxious, but we don't realize that at the core of it is actually grief over some loss that has come into our lives and into our experiences. So I help people who are going through those kinds of life transitions. I also am a speaker and the host of this show, of course, and I am an author. I have written 3 books, Chakras, The Magnificent 7, which I don't have a copy of in front of me here today, but this one is one of my favorites. It's called Grief. When Will This Pain Ever End? And what I love about that book in particular is it's not volumes and volumes of pages and ideas and heavy thoughts. Because when you're grieving, you're really not so good at thinking about those kinds of things. So I've kept the chapters short, and the book is filled with processes and articles and tools to help you move through your grief so you don't become your grief. And then my latest book is one of my favorites. It's a little book called Saying the Right Thing When You Don't Know What to Say. And this book I feel like is a real treasure because I have seen over my 28 years in practice too many people who are heartbroken because they go through a loss and nobody shows up. Nobody calls. And I know why they don't. They don't call because they don't know what to say. They're afraid they're going to do something that's going to make it worse for the person who's already hurting. Well, saying the right thing when you don't know what to say gives you specific sentences that are helpful to say and sentences that are not helpful to say. And it also goes in depth into the 5 steps of having a successful, supportive communication with somebody who is in emotional pain. You can grab both of those books on Amazon. But by the way, if you want to learn more about my work, or you want to get my free gift that ties in with that book, go to paulashaw.com. And on paulashaw.com is something called 20 Things to Say and Not to Say to People in Emotional Pain. And you can get that free. So check that out. And also, if you want to learn more about this show or learn more about being a sponsor or a guest on this show, go to changeitupradio.com. That's changeitupradio.com. Okay, so in our first show, I talked a lot about how we really are a world of grievers because every single one of us has suffered some level of loss as a result of this pandemic. And we also talked about the fact that the way to deal with change successfully, the way to deal with grief, is through resiliency. It's that part of us that gets back on the horse, that part of us that figures out a new way to do it, that part of us that doesn't get defeated when tough times come. It's that part of us that says, all right, today was tough. Today was a really hard day, but I'll get back up tomorrow and I'll find another way. I'll do something different or something new, but I'll find my way to go put one foot in front of another and walk into that day in the best way I can. That's not the exact definition of resiliency, but that's kind of how resiliency plays in my life and in the lives of so many people that I've worked with. You know, we don't all have a perfect day every day, and things don't go perfectly in our families, in our relationships, in our businesses. They just don't. But resiliency is finding that place inside of you that won't give up. That place inside of you that says, all right, this is not going to defeat me. I'm going to figure it out. And today I am excited on my show to share with you a gentleman who has kind of mastered that, who has been a kind of the poster boy for resiliency all his life. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about my guest today, Eric DeVine. Eric DeVine was born in 1977 in San Antonio, Texas, and he was the son of a hardworking special education school teacher and a father who was the first African American to be among the first African Americans to be hired by IBM as an engineer. Eric grew up with the entrepreneurial spirit. It started very young because watching his mother work so hard to raise 3 children after a divorce with his father, he began looking for ways that he could help out. Oh, isn't that the son we all pray for? He started his first lawn mowing business before the 5th grade, and he would go on to start several other businesses in his lifetime. He realized pretty young that he was not built to be an employee. I believe he said he's been fired from about 18 jobs. So, you know, when that happens, you figure out that you're probably meant to be the entrepreneur. You got to be the boss, not the employee. He had a father, though, who throughout all of Eric's life preached the value of owning real estate. And by the age of 23, Eric and his brother had purchased their first property in Dallas, Texas. And that just kind of went on. He moved to Oakland, and by 2004, they had purchased their first fourplex in East Oakland. And he and his brother remained hyper-focused on building that real estate portfolio. And today they have done that amazingly well. And now their focus is on teaching other people financial literacy and encouraging entrepreneurs to reach their goals, not only in real estate, but in all aspects of business. So, and one of the most important parts of this bio that I've not yet mentioned, I met Eric DeVine in the LA airport. We were both on a long layover. And, you know, this probably wouldn't even have happened today because everybody's just looking at their phones. But Eric and I started talking and we ended up sharing a meal, and we have been connected ever since. And so it is my total delight and pleasure to be able to introduce you to this man so that you can learn from him yourselves and see what a beautiful spirit he really is. So, Eric, Would you pop back on and let's chat?
I hope I can live up to half of what you just said. I'm excited to meet me.
Well, I know you've already lived up to it. I know who you are. Eric, for our listeners, tell them a little bit about childhood. Let's go back to the beginning. So, because I wonder, and I'm sure we all do, is the entrepreneur born an entrepreneur, or is it something that's acculturated into him? Is it, kind of the old, is it nature or nurture? So tell us a little bit about you. How did it all begin?
Well, that's a great question, and I still think about that. Was I born into this entrepreneurial spirit, or was it developed? I think it's a combination of both. Um,
Yeah.
My mother was a super, just a wonderful mom. Like, she's an angel, and always kind to everyone, always encouraging and supportive. And watching her work 3 jobs was the beginning of planting the seed in my mind that I don't want life to look like that for me when I'm an adult. And that's kind of when the thought was born, watching her work so hard.
Mm-hmm.
And then being a great mom, even though her and my father were divorced, she maintained a healthy relationship with him, at least from what we could see, from what the kids could see. So I have a younger brother, Greg DeVine, and an older sister named Iris. So mom would work 3 jobs to support all of us. And I said, now, my first entrepreneurial attempt was just to help mom pay the bills every month.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah, that's kind of where it came from. We laughed. She would always say things like, life challenges build character, and that was played in my mind. Oh gosh, this builds character. This builds character. I said, Mom, I'm going to be an actor by the time I'm old with all the character that you're giving me. Sometimes we didn't have lights at the end of the month. Sometimes we didn't have electricity at the end of the month. But we maintained that positive outlook, and that's all Mom right there.
What did she do, Eric? What were the kinds of things she said or did that helped you not to get, what's the word I want? Like, kind of swept into the mire of the fact that you had a tough financial situation you were dealing with?
It was positivity. It was an abundance of positivity. And it's not, we all have challenges. Some of them come in different forms, but the skills that Mom gave us was an outlook of not only the positivity, mix it with humor so that we can laugh through the pain as opposed to crying through the pain. Because the laughter built laughter, it just built a positive energy, a positive outlook, and I think I've used that as a tool my entire life. That when it gets hard, I always find the humor in everything. And I don't know if it's a defense mechanism that I've developed over time, but all I can say is that it's worked for me.
It's a good one. It's a good one. I, too, have to say that I'm a big fan of laughter, a big fan of humor. And fortunately, my whole family is very much that way. My brother, Craig, is very funny. My father worked for a while as a stand-up comedian. So, laughter was always a part of our home. And luckily for me, I married a man who was funny, and my children are both really witty and hysterical. My daughter Erin and my son Casey, who you know.
Yes.
I'm a big fan of humor. I think it gets us through some of the darkest times and helps remind us. I think it helps put us in touch with, we aren't perfect. Nothing's perfect. And if we can't just sit back and laugh at ourselves and laugh at the situation, then it has the power to overcome us, overwhelm us, and then we don't function very well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more.
So, Eric, I'm sure a lot of people would look at you and say, okay, you came from this tough financial background as a child, but by 23, you were buying property. Especially, well, of course, your first property was Texas, but now I know you buy in California. And
Yes.
so many of us in California are reached a place where, like, how do you ever afford it because of how expensive California's become? But even in Texas, at 23, how did you guys get it together? How did you do that?
Oh my goodness. This is a crazy story. I'm glad you asked that because uh, imagine my brother and I, first of all, I'm 16 months older than my brother. So in the year 2000, we're both graduating from college.
Oh my.
Okay. Because
Uh-huh.
I was a year behind for all kind of reasons. So my brother and I graduate almost at the same time. Thankfully, I graduated a month earlier only because my university was scheduled for a month earlier. So dad always would preach, you guys aren't going to rent, you're going to own. And it was in his mind that that's just the way it was going to be, but it wasn't in my pocket. His mind and my pocket weren't aligning. So as a real estate broker, my dad flew down to Dallas, Texas,
Hmm.
and my brother and I are looking for a townhome to purchase. And meanwhile, my brother, right out of college, this is during the dot-com boom,
Hmm.
my brother already has a job, and I think he was making around $80,000.
Oh.
That $80,000 is what helped us qualify for the loan that my dad then came down and helped us kind of put the thing together.
Mhm.
Meanwhile, my brother and my dad says, oh, by the way, you and your brother are going to split the mortgage, taxes, and insurance. I didn't know what taxes and insurance were. I had no idea. And I remember the mortgage was about $2,800 a month.
Mm.
Meanwhile, Greg's got a job and I'm still interviewing.
Ah.
I'll never forget when the mortgage we just closed on the property and now I need to pay half the mortgage and I have $0 coming in.
Oh my.
I'm in a job interview with EDS in Dallas, Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And the lady calls me. I'm playing video games in my brother's dorm room. She calls me and says, Mr. DeVine, just letting you know that the job opportunity, you made it through all the interview processes. We really appreciate your time, but we're going to go in another direction.
Oh.
I put the game on pause and I said, meanwhile, I'm 20, maybe 21, 22 years old. I don't know how life works. So I said to her, no, sorry, you can't do that. I have a mortgage. And you're going to need to hire me today because I have a start date. Meanwhile, I learned early in that moment how life works. He hangs up the phone and I'm unemployed.
Oh, my Lord.
And so everything that mom and dad instilled in me would not let me lean on the fact that a mortgage was due in 30 days as an excuse not to pay.
Mm.
So my mind didn't go into retreat. It went into attack mode. And so I started calling other job opportunities. Long story short, got the job just in the nick of time. It actually required me to move back to San Antonio, Texas. So I moved back in with mom while I'm going through this orientation with a job. Only a few months later to move back into the space, the new townhome with my brother, and pay half the mortgage. So that was my first reality check of how life works.
Yeah.
The bank could care less if you don't have a job or if you have excuses. And so, yeah, that was the beginning of, holy crap, life is real.
Yeah. And I love what you just shared because we're talking about resiliency today. And you could have been devastated when she hung up on you and you realize I'm unemployed and I've got a mortgage coming up. But instead, you figured out some other things to do. You started calling other companies and made something else happen. That's what's so important about resiliency. It's like not falling off that horse and staying on the ground. It's finding another way to get up and stay on. And that's huge. That's really huge. And I'm also really loving the fact that you said, and you credit your mom with this amazing positivity that I think instilled in you, and I may be wrong, but it feels to me like all that positivity instilled in you some kind of a belief that things always work out. There's a way. You just got to keep looking for it. Is that accurate, Eric?
That's spot on. And a real life example, going back to my mom and how she struggled with bills. I remember the last week of the month, my brother and I walk into the house, and we're probably in 7th grade, and the lights don't work. And we hit the switch and lights aren't coming on. And it gets dark early. This is that time of year in the fall. We look across the street, all the neighbors' lights are on. And we think, well, what the heck's going on with our lights? Well, mom couldn't pay the bill. So in that moment, do you get upset? Do you, do you retreat into a dark space? Or do you light a candle and have fun with it? And my brother and I decided we're going to light candles and walk around the house. And this is how we do our homework tonight.
Wow.
I think my mom is probably somewhere cringing, going, "Oh, Eric, don't tell. Oh, mijo, don't tell that story, mijo." and I say, Mom, we got to embrace it.
Yes.
Like, let's embrace our failures because we all have them. It's how you overcome those failures that separates you from the person you want to be in a lot of cases versus person, or where you're at. And I'm gonna give the floor back to you, but I heard somewhere that we are all millionaires. And I thought to myself when I saw that somewhere on Instagram, we're all millionaires. Wow. Yes. Some of us make $1 million and others make 1 million excuses. And I thought, man, that's genius.
Oh, that's so good. That's so good. You and I were talking recently, and one of the things you brought out is that it isn't just about accruing material stuff, money and material goods, but you were saying the mental health part of the journey is super important. And of course, that's what I believe, because that's why I'm in the kind of work I'm in. But I think the mental health part also includes your attitude, your perspective on how to view life. So tell us a little bit about, what's most important to you, Eric? How do you view life?
Well, if you would have told asked the 20-year-old Eric that question, he would say material stuff and money is a sign of success. And we have to go through those things because, until you become what you strive to be, how can you have an opinion on that millionaire lifestyle that you dreamed of? When you get there, and I think my brother and I got there somewhere in our early 30s, mid 30s, you realize that it's an empty pursuit if you're not happy upstairs, or in a good space mentally. And so I think with we all need that mental maintenance to find out every step of the way what's making us happy, what's making us sad, what's making us depressed. But can you ask that question again? Because my ADD kicks in and it takes me on this.
I'm just
Okay.
asking, what's most important to you to keep that perspective positive and to keep balance in your life? Because that's what speaks to me about is balance.
It's the people that you allow into your life. So
Mm.
the people that you allow into your mental space, into your safe space, that are all the nutrients that you need to get to where you want to go in life. And if you have bad apples, people who are energy takers,
Yes.
um, you won't get there because you're busy tending to any negative energy that they're bringing in. And that's heavy. Trying to become, I would say, like the dream version of yourself,
Mm-hmm.
it is hard enough. It's even harder when you allow people that are negative, that are hateful, that are spiteful, that just have you know, a bad outlook on life. It's hard to get to where you want to go if you're carrying those people's energy with you.
Oh, so true. So true. And I know that you're a dad. You've got, I think, I know you have a daughter, but do you also have a son?
That's right. Ava is 9 years old, and Evan just turned 7. So, I get to be a father and learn from the the wins and losses my dad had with me as a child, and
Mm.
try to do a better job. So my kids, create that bond, because I didn't
Yes.
grow up with a father in the house, so I didn't realize how important that bond is with your
Mm.
children. So
And I love it. I just heard on a podcast yesterday, we either learn from our parents what we want to do, or we learn from our parents what we don't want to do.
mhm.
And I think it's beautiful that when you don't have an ideal, so to speak, relationship growing up, that then rather than wasting a lot of time feeling sorry for yourself or crying the blues about that, one
Mhm.
of the things you determine is that it's going to be different in your life and in your relationship with your children. And I know that you're doing that. I loved the story that we shared a while back about a conversation you had with your daughter. And I love that when she had concerns about something, you went right to, let's sit down and talk about this. Let's see if we can figure out some ways to make it better. I mean, in my mind my professional mind and my mind as a mother, that's like the perfect thing to do. And and one of the things, like in that book I talked about earlier, saying the right thing when you don't know what to say, one of the things I encourage people is that you don't have to be this fount of wisdom. You don't have to be this, oh, great wise one. All you have to do is really listen. Listen to what they have to say and then respond from your heart, not your head, because when people are hurting, they don't need our database, they need our humanity. And I love the story you shared with me because that's what you did. You shared your humanity. You helped your daughter to feel she wasn't alone and she wasn't defective because she wasn't a perfect human being. And then you figured out some ways to make it better. That's a beautiful skill. And obviously, it's not one you learned through a lot of experience with your dad, but
That's
maybe your
correct.
mom, huh?
Yes, yes, and to the audience who may be wondering what that situation was, I don't mind sharing. It was,
Ah,
a 9-year-old being out of school because of the pandemic for a year,
mhm,
and now going back to school and feeling very anxious. Dad, I feel anxious. I'm nervous. What are these? Why am I feeling this way?
mhm.
And for me, it was to what you just said. Let's sit down and talk about what anxiety is, and what could make you feel better in working through the anxious feelings that you're having.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so ended up going online and ordering some of these. They're called poppets, I think. These are little toys and fidget spinners that allow children to um, to kind of occupy their mind as they're going through that uneasy feeling. And like to your point, just giving her a safe space to sit down and talk about her feelings.
Yeah, that's so important. So important. And I think that the other thing is she didn't feel alone. She felt that she was being companioned with this issue in the way that you were handling it for her. And that's so huge because as humans, one of the things we dread the most is feeling alone. And so I really loved that story, Eric. So we couldn't end this interview without you talking a little bit about your latest endeavor, because I know now you and Greg are the real estate tycoons. You're doing some amazing things with real estate, but now you've stepped into YouTube and you've got a show on YouTube called The DeVine Way. So tell our listeners a little bit about the show and what's your goal? What are your hopes for doing this?
Well, I appreciate you asking that question. The DeVine Way was born during the pandemic when we were sitting at home, twiddling our thumbs, and a friend of mine came to me and he said, "Eric, you've made it in life. You can just sit back and enjoy all the fruits of your labor and don't have to work again the rest of your life." In that moment when he said that, because he was right, the other side of me said, hell no, I cannot just sit here. There are far too many people out there like me. There are a lot of young Erics and Gregs in this world that are one decision away from killing their dream. And if we can reach those people through the DeVine Way TV channel and share our journey through real estate investment, the good, the bad, and the ugly, just complete transparency, which is what I feel is lacking with a lot of educators and mentors, is tell me the worst of the worst so I know I can mentally prepare. And being able to, we've been doing this, my brother and I have, once we made it in real estate, we've always tried to encourage and bring all of our friends with us. Some of them just didn't get it. It went over their heads. And they call to this day and say, shoulda, coulda, woulda, you guys are right. And a lot of people did. When we said, hey, you should buy this property in the Great Recession, 2008, 2009, homes were less than $100,000 in East Oakland. A lot of people, I remember we had a dinner and we told everybody that you should go buy real estate. A lot of people did. And as a result of their decision, they're now millionaires. So not only are we doing the DeVine Way channel and trying to promote, educate, and encourage all entrepreneurs, not just real estate. This is across the board. We can create a space for entrepreneurs and aspiring entrepreneurs, just like I created that safe space for my daughter, to come and share their wins and their losses and their struggles and their successes. And I'll close with this is, I almost lost my train of thought, that I have become the real estate therapist. I am basically fielding weekly calls now from entrepreneurs in real estate and others. Eric, I've got this problem. How do I solve this problem? I've got this tenant that's a nightmare. What should I do? I've got a leaky roof. Who can I call? And I field so many phone calls now that I think I am also a real estate therapist, not licensed, but yes, that's also what I do. So I want to really create this platform to show people across the world that if you are resilient to the point of this podcast here, that resiliency, you'll get there. Wherever it is in your mind, you've got to get it in your mind first, but you'll get there wherever you want to go. And if your mind is in the garbage, guess where you end up.
Amen. Amen. I have a zillion more questions I'd love to ask you, but that was such a perfect thing that you just said. I think it's a beautiful place for us to end, that You know, I love the way you have talked, Eric, about the marriage between the mind and the behavior and the character and all of that, that your head has to be right, your actions have to be right, and you need to get up and keep doing things. You know, it isn't going to just magically happen. But I know a lot of people who just are totally discouraged about real estate because they feel like, well, how will I ever get the money together for a down payment? And so I know there is a lot out there for you to teach. And I know you and Greg have done a lot of that with this show, The DeVine Way. And I really want to encourage everybody to check it out on YouTube and subscribe and learn from these guys, because we all know the one investment that almost never fails is real estate. And Eric, I just think since the day I met you, you've just had this beautiful spirit, and there was always something about you that just made my heart sing to be around you.
Okay.
And I just want to thank you so much for being with me today, for sharing your wisdom and your knowledge and your humanity. You're really one of the good guys, Eric.
Well, I really appreciate that. And we got to let the audience know that mental maintenance is a daily, weekly check-in, because we all need that checkup from the neck up. Now, I don't know if I can copyright that and put that on a t-shirt, but I'll call your son, who is now also part of our marketing team, and run that by him. But I make it light, but it's really vital to wherever you want to go in life, is that mental maintenance.
I love it. We all need a checkup from the neck up. That should have been my byline for the last 28 years. Where were you when I needed you?
Well, here we are today. Now you can use it moving forward.
Absolutely. I'll be quoting you left and right.
Sure.
All right, dear. Thank you so much for joining me. And a reminder to everybody, check out The DeVine Way on YouTube and subscribe and learn from this wonderful man.
Thank you so much, Paula. Appreciate it.
My pleasure, Eric. My pleasure. Thank you. And
all right.
Thank you all for listening. And we will be with you again next week with another show from Change It Up Radio. And we'll be talking again with the underlying theme of resiliency, because I think that's an important one for all of us getting back into life after the craziness of the last year and a half. All right, I'll see you then.
One quick question. How can my audience find you if they need help with your services?
Oh, thank you for asking. First of all, this show, by the way, is on every major podcast platform, and they can find me. And by the way, I offer a complimentary 20-minute consult. All of that is available on paulashaw.com.
Oh,
and if they want to learn more about this show, it's changeitupradio.com. And again, for this show as well, please listen, subscribe, let us know what you like and what you don't. All right. Eric, I don't know. I think there might be a podcast in our future together. I'm loving this.
Let's do it. I'm ready. I got an empty seat next to me. Come on.
All right, deal. But it's got to have something to do with that checkup from the neck up.
You got it. You got it.
I love it. All right. Thank you all for being with us, and we'll see you next week.
All
Bye-bye.
Right. Bye-bye.